Last Prof JC here, coming to you this time from Minneapolis, Minnesota, out here for actually another board meeting. It is freezing out here. It was funny, yesterday I arrived here and the gentleman who drove the Uber from the airport to the hotel, he was telling me, he said, yeah, it's a really warm day out today. It's a really nice day out today. I'm going to go home after I finish dropping you off, and I'm going to put my shorts on and go for a run. I said, what? It was 42 degrees. Now that's how cold it is. For him, 42 degrees was like a nice day. It was a beautiful day, a time to go out for a run. I mean, 42 for us in San Diego, those of us who live in Southern California, I mean, I don't think it gets that cold at nighttime usually, right? So anyway, but it's a great place to be. So here we are, and I want to talk this week. We're on page 208. I love this book. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to really dive in, but I hope you keep this book. Don't give it away. Don't sell it. It's really a good book, and I hope that over time you're able to kind of walk through it. It's so many gold lessons. I'm going to just start reading through this a little bit. Page 208, humble ambition is what he calls it, humble ambition. We have arrived, therefore, at a different theory of motivation. To recapitulate the Augustinian process, it starts with a dive inside to see the vastness of our inner cosmos. We got a lot of things going on inside here, right? The inward dive leads outward toward an awareness of external truth in God. That leads to humility as one feels small in contrast to the Almighty. That leads to a posture of surrender, of self-emptying as one makes space for God. That opens the way for you to receive God's grace. That gift arouses an immense feeling of gratitude, a desire to love back, to give back to the light. That in turn awakens vast energies. Over the centuries, many people have been powerfully motivated to delight God. This motivation has been as powerful as the other great motivations, the desire for money, fame, and power. The genius of this conception is that as people become more dependent on God, their capacity for ambition and action increases. Dependency doesn't bring passivity, it breeds energy and accomplishment. So I think what he's talking about there is that when we have this dependency on God, or for those of you who don't necessarily believe in God, maybe a higher purpose, a higher being, the capacity increases. And here's why I think that happens. I was just thinking about this the other night. When you study people like Elon Musk, and again, I'm not trying to equate him with, having a dependency on God. But Elon Musk, when you listen to him talk, he always speaks in big terms. He's always speaking about the world problems he wants to solve. Okay. So when you're trying to solve a world problem, you're going to have to do big things. So he's not setting out to say, I'm going to do a big thing and take a rocket to the moon or do whatever it is he's trying to do, all these things, build these new cars and Tesla, all that kind of stuff. What he's setting out to do is solve some massive problem. Okay. But so when I think what this is trying to say is so that when we judge ourselves against that, it brings greater ambition because it's so huge, but it also brings a sense of humility because it's so huge, whatever that thing is. Okay. And I think that's what he's saying is when we bring ourselves maybe in, we empty out ourselves and we have a motivation maybe to bring delight to God. Okay. We become more dependent on God. We have prayers and conversations about what problem in the world do you want me to solve, God? Then at that point, it's something much bigger than what, So we pursue big things. We become big human beings. I don't mean large, like physically, but just our minds and how we see the world, because we're pursuing something that's absolutely huge. Okay. And so this idea of integrity, how do we bring humility? Well, we see ourselves in light of something much bigger, and it makes our ambition grow so we still can keep the same ambition. Look, a lot of you are in this leadership program. You're in this program. You have a ton of ambition, and it's what I'd call, and I think ambition is a great thing. I think it's a wonderful thing. Okay. But if the ambition is for self, what we're going to find is it can't extend past this right here. Maybe you get the nice car, maybe you get the nice house, but that's the extent of it right there. And there's a lot of people who live like that. The ambition that they have is for themselves. What this book is talking about, a humble ambition. So when we see ourselves in light of God, it just makes our goals and dreams bigger. Okay. Dependency basically on God doesn't breed passivity. It breeds energy and accomplishment. Why? Because we're seeing ourselves in light of something so big, so huge. I remember years ago, I worked for a guy who was a pastor, actually, and he's major. He's got an international reach and TV, all kinds of stuff. I remember, and I think I'm a pretty ambitious guy. I've got a lot of energy, got a lot of passion to move forward. I couldn't even keep up. I mean, it was so fun to work for him. It was about 4 or 5 years I worked for him. It was so fun to work for him because his energy and his vision was so big. I couldn't at that time, I couldn't see it that way. But again, for him, it was about, obviously his faith and spreading his faith. But for him, it was about spreading his faith on a global basis. So that's what he said is, I want everyone in the world to have this faith that I have. So that drove every decision he makes. So he had to grow bigger, right? But at the same time, it was that humble ambition because it was seeing himself in light of a higher being, in light of God, okay? Let's keep reading the old loves. Again, page 208. After his conversion in the garden, Augustine did not live a tranquil, easy life. He enjoyed an initial burst of optimism, but then came the thudding realizations that his own sinfulness was still there. His own false loves had not magically died away. As his biographer put it, the past can come very close. It's powerful, and complex emotions have only recently passed away. We can still feel their their contours through the thin layer of new feeling that has grown over them. When Augustine writes Confessions, which is in some sense a memoir of his early manhood, he's not writing them as genial reminiscences. He's writing them as a necessary reassessment occasioned by hard times. As Brown writes, he must base his future on a different view of himself. And how could he gain the view except by reinterpreting just that part of his past that had culminated in the conversion on which he had recently placed such high hopes? Augustine is reminding believers that the center of their lives is not in themselves. It goes back to everything we just talked about. The center of our lives cannot be just ourselves. That's the most we'll ever see in life. If that's the center of our life, if it's just about us, then we're never going to make an impact. We're never going to be the leaders. We're never going to be doing the things that we want to do and impacting the world that we want to make, because it's all about us. The material world is beautiful and to be savored and enjoyed, but the pleasures of this world are most delicious when they are savored in the larger context of God's transcendent love. Augustine's prayers and meditations are filled with celebrations of the world that surpassed the world. In one of his most beautiful meditations, for example, Augustine asked, who do I love when I love my God? That's a beautiful question to ask. Who do I love when I love my God? That's a powerful question. And here's what Augustine has to write right here. It is not physical beauty or temporal glory or the brightness of light dear to the earthly eyes, or the sweet melodies of all kinds of songs, or the gentle odor of flowers and ointments and perfumes, or manna or honey, or limbs welcoming the embraces of flesh. It is not these I love when I love my God. Yet there is a light I love, and a food and a kind of embrace when I love my God, a light, voice, odor, food, embrace of my innerness. So basically saying, here's the thing, a light, voice, odor, food, embrace of my innerness, where my soul is floodlit by light, which space cannot contain, where there is sound that time cannot seize, where there is a perfume with no breeze disperses, where there is a taste for food no amount of eating can lessen, where there is a bond of union that no satiety can part. That's what I love when I love my God. And then it goes on to say here, coming out of what Augustine just says, it says this, the book says, this is living in a broader context. As the theologian Lisa Fulham has put it, humility is a virtue of self-understanding in context acquired by the practice of other-centeredness. That's beautiful. Humility is a virtue of self-understanding in context. Who am I in context of the world around me? Who am I in context of my family? Who am I in the context of my work? So understanding all of that, that's what brings humility, acquired by the practice of being other-centered. It's not a focus on me. It's not a focus on you. It's a focus on, again, when we see ourselves in light of dependency on God, our vision grows bigger, our ambition grows bigger, because why? We're viewing ourselves in light of something greater versus just making it all about us. I'm going to read that one more time. Humility is a virtue of self-understanding in context, acquired by the practice of other-centeredness, moving away from us towards the self. Man, there's so much that we could write about this right here. Here's what I want to ask you to go deep on this, okay? We are a faith-based university, so I should feel freedom to go ahead and ask you this. If you are a person who has moved towards dependency on God, what has that taught you? What do you find that you love? How do you think that has impacted your life and will impact your future? So I want to hear you answer that. If you are not a person, and it's okay, you're not gonna get less grades because you're not depending on God, right? That's, but if you're not a person who has found dependency on God or a higher being or faith or whatever it might be, how has that impacted your being? Do you still have a larger sense of purpose? How are you able to maintain humility without some larger faith, some larger being, some larger God to see yourself in contrast to? So there we go. Those are the two lanes. You can answer one or the other one of those. And I cannot wait to read your answers. Thanks so much for listening today. I'll see you in the next. I think next week is our final episode, as we are fully in the home stretch now. Thanks so much for all your work. I'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.